Welcome to the Mormon Medium Podcast, where we'll talk about spirituality, the paranormal, religion, and my journey in becoming a Mormon medium. I'm Nanette Ride. Thanks for listening. Now let's go have some fun.
Don't be afraid. Close your eyes. There's a moon overhead, but the sun will rise. Blood on our lips, such a poisonous bite. The sound of our hearts go bump, bump, bump in the night.
Hello and welcome to the Mormon Medium Podcast. Please be warned that on today's episode, we will be discussing sensitive mental health topics, including depression and suicide. Please know that you are loved, and if you are considering suicide, have suicidal ideations, or know someone who is, please get help. Talk to a trusted friend, a mental health professional, or you can call the suicide helpline by dialing 988. Welcome to the Mormon Medium Podcast. This episode will continue our conversation with Justin Stum, marriage and family therapist. To listen to the first half of the episode, pull up Season 1, Episode 32. The conversation you're about to hear is in progress. If you remember, Justin was just telling us about a time where he got called out by someone who really stood up for what they believed in.
But I've had a lot of years to think about that, and that was the only time that happened. But I've thought a lot about the things that he knew and was educated and versed on and expanded on in his own emotional and psychological development that I wasn't. And when he saw that not only was I dismissive, but producing harm, and it was in his context, he put a stop to it. And some of what I said in ignorance, I warranted that response, actually. I look back and he fought fire with fire. I didn't see it that way in that moment, but I had several days and years to think about it. So that's the answer to that's the very long answer to your question.
I love it.
And that is we have to command our own individual influence and individual authority in spaces where we can create a ripple that allows people to feel whole.
You said it. Did you hear the ripple word? It's like my favorite word, the show.
Oh, it is?
Well, this
Tell me.
last week, it's been, that's the buzzword.
It's the buzzword, yeah. So what does ripple mean to you, Justin? When you just used it like that, what does
I
it
think
mean?
it's because he took a stand for propriety, for respect, for kindness, for compassion, and to someone who is not. And he came on really strong, and that was warranted, I think. And I, in like manner, have done some similar things, actually. I don't know that that was the language that I chose, but I can think of 2 or 3 settings where I spoke very loudly. And
I love it.
I think it cut in the same way. Maybe a little more intellectual and a little less profane, but I've said some things in some statements that made people very uncomfortable. And some of that, I think, promotes, hey, we're not doing that. And we don't need people in shameful places and insecure places and in strained places. Let's promote more kindness and more compassion and more space for everyone's value, so that when I'm in this place, or this place that Brad mentioned that he was personally involved with, there's a soft landing place for him to say, Justin, I am struggling so much.
Yeah.
And for me to say, gosh, I'm so glad you told me. I'm here. I'm just right here.
Do you know the wrong thing to say is, yeah, if you were serious about this, you wouldn't be talking about it. You would just do it. And that's actually the response I got from someone who I thought was a close friend and who was actually a supervisor at the time.
Are
who
you
I
serious?
Confided in and went to help.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I've got a lot of healing to do over that one. I'm still I probably need a balance for that.
There's a balance for that.
when my body's ready to process that one.
And that's the piece. If we go back to those steps we talked about earlier, can we maybe stay with your example for a moment? I mean, your lived experience, rather. And that was, his ego was in that. It was about something's rightness or wrongness. Well, if you were serious, then I'm thinking, Mr. Supervisor, how do you know? You've only been listening for 5 seconds. And it was more about him commanding or exacting in that moment, whether it was legitimate or not. And to that end, I think it's important to say, we don't know what it is. We're just experiencing Brad. And I'm going to create space in this moment to hear him.
And that would have been huge, because I can tell you the reaction I got pushed me much farther to that darkness than I was.
Mm-hmm.
I hate that. When I went through mine, I actually had the police called to come to get me. There was no listening. There was no, yeah. My friend, who's no longer a friend, called the police. And then I had the police call my phone. And then it was like, are you going to take your life? And I was just like, no, I'm fine. Like, which pushed me darker. But then I just wasn't going to talk about it. Do you know? So like that, don't do that to someone either. You've got to crawl in the hole with them and listen. I love your examples. I love, your list of what people should do.
It's important because in that place where you weren't heard, where there wasn't the listening that you needed, and in Brad's condition as well, the difficulty of those kinds of responses or iterations from others is that it could, Brad, in your case, it could cause you to question what you're experiencing. I know, I'll be Brad for a moment, retrospectively, like, oh, am I not serious? Am I bullshitting me? Is this, wait, what? And so I think when we can hold space for this is what they're experiencing and that's what it is, or it's what Brad thinks he's experiencing, because we can guess and attempt to interpret what people are feeling, but we don't know because he wasn't in you. But it's easy, I think, to move there and to move into, well, individuals who die by suicide don't always talk about it. And if they're talking about it, then they're staging or they want attention. But that argument doesn't hold a lot of weight, because there are people that are talking about their suicidal ideations and they do die by suicide. And there are people that are not talking about it and die by suicide. So I think it's important to note that aged axiom or purported axiom that, well, if you're talking about it, then you're not really serious is not meaningful. But as you said, it increased your struggle and that you were not seen. Additionally, I think in your own moment, whether you acknowledge it consciously or not, it's, gosh, I'm bidding to connect here. And I'm opening up a part of me, and there's dismissive language.
Yeah, it's hard enough already to talk about it. And then when you have that dismissiveness, it really shuts you down. And that was the last person I talked to about it. And it's funny, I put out that trigger warning at the beginning of this episode, and here I am, the one being triggered.
I think you're being healing. It's being healed. It's bubbling to the surface, so you're going to address it. So, and that's good. That's good. That's hard work. See what you do, Justin.
He's in a real space. It reminds me of that movie. Did you see Sarah's Key?
No.
I'm just thinking, I'm grimacing. You can't see that in the audio. I'm not sure what I think about that recommendation, but I'm hoping he keeps this part in the podcast.
Sarah's Key.
There's a scene at the very beginning of that movie. And there's a Jewish woman singing, and there's two kids on the bed. And it's a young lady who we'll say is maybe 8 years old, and a young man who's maybe 6, and they're wrestling. And there's a Jewish woman's voice, and she's singing. I don't remember what she was singing, but I remember in some of the closed captioned piece of the first 5 minutes of that film.
How do you know Justin's an intellectual?
It was so rich. It was so rich.
I watch foreign films with subtitles while drinking a nice Merlot.
I think that's the 4th movie of all time with subtitles, actually. But it was so good. It was so good. And she's singing, and she says, stories never told are always forgotten. And I turned to my wife and said, that's going to mean something in the whole movie. I just know it. And I was sobbing at the end. It hit me so hard because she concluded that statement at the end of the film. But that's some of what I'm experiencing with both of you and with what, Nan, you were saying about Brad in this moment. And that is that when we're not telling our story and then finding meaning, whether it be in a podcast or in relationships, it's hard to process in the same way when it's buried and when we're not talking. But in order to do it, we have to be safe enough to go there. And so showing up in our relationships in a way that promotes compassion and kindness and tolerance and acceptance and consideration and curiosity. We're moving away from, what's the opposite of that? Fixing, forcing, making, into this different path that, as Nan said, you said he's healing.
Yeah.
Right? That healing is in the saying, hey, this was my felt experience and that matters to me. And this is how that was. And I have two people who are saying, I'm so glad you told me. Can you tell me more about what was coming up? And I'm willing to listen. But with curiosity and not ego about whether you're serious or not, or, well, should we call someone? Or don't do that. That's a terrible idea. Or the humor, which I find often comes up for people in their discomfort. Oh, you'd never do that. Our friendship goes back too much. Or this. Instead, it's just allowing that to kind of unflow. And yeah, that's what you needed.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks for hearing me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really glad that it came up, though. It's interesting because when people come in to be balanced, they talk about, things just bubble up. I'm starting to feel this. And I always tell them, you can't heal everything at once. You've got to heal body, mind, and soul. And you can't eat an elephant except for one bite at a time. So we can heal a little bit at a time, and your body has to keep you safe. So it'll only bubble a little bit at a time up. Me and Brad have been together a long time, and this has never been something that has come up. I mean, I've known, but it hasn't come up to be healed, So this is a sacred space to stand in because his body is ready to release it. And I think that it's really magnificent to be a part of seeing this, and you're ready. And just, you can't see this, but when Brad needs to center himself, he'll get a worry stone. It's usually a stone he's found on a hike or something, super smooth usually and round, and he's rubbing one right now on his fingers because he's processing. Things are going on. I'm super proud of you, babe.
Thanks. I think the bottom line with that story is it goes along with the quote from Walt Whitman or Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso.
Be curious, not judgmental.
Yeah. I love that.
Can I springboard off that? I love that word. Curious. I think there's a difference between being curious and being open. And I like curious. And as we think of the nature of the topic of both of your experiences around these kinds of thoughts and feelings, absolutely be curious. There's no disparaging of that word. It's one of my favorite words for lots of reasons. But I think it's important to be open to, at least in this position that you were in, or with the law enforcement with you, Nan, to be open to whatever they bring to the table. Curious, like, I wonder what this is about. And I wonder where this is going to go. And I'm going to allow it to be wherever it is. And I'm going to consider it. In the same way that I might say there's a very big difference, and this is another path that we won't go down necessarily, but between being nice and being kind.
And they are very different words.
Right. And so curious is beautiful. I'm not disparaging that whatsoever. I love curious and the lack of judgment and lack of ego. I'm adding a word to kind of build on the quote or the gem thought that Brad shared. And that's, in that curiosity, let's be open to whatever happens. And when Brad says, this is where I really am, it's like, gosh, okay. And things like, I'm just right here, doesn't really promote or invite an answer, but it's me making a statement that's letting Brad know where my heart is. I'm right here.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay.
And that's significant.
Mm-hmm.
That's significant to know that, wow, someone hears me. Someone is there. Someone supports me.
And they didn't run away.
They didn't run away. They didn't judge me. They're right here.
Right.
There's something unique about humans that way. If you're up in Snow Canyon in southern Utah and you drive up Snow Canyon a third of the way, on your left-hand side, I sound like I work for the park.
On the left-hand side, you'll see the beautiful striations of the red and white rock.
I love
on
it.
the right,
He sounds so good.
You'll see the giant volcanic penis that's on the side of the mountain. And that's no lie. If you look about a third of the way up, on the right-hand side of the mountain, there is a giant black penis, complete with testicles, made out of volcanic rock.
There's also a set of lungs to the side, too.
Yes, there is.
This is an entirely appropriate place to tell phallic jokes.
Oh, completely.
I mean, if we're talking about encopretic moments and releases from your behind and colonoscopies, phallic jokes are totally appropriate.
it's yeah. It's completely.
If you
within the
go up
realm.
there, you can look for the phallic symbols that I'll look for next time. We'll put the GPS location in the show notes. But in addition to that, I might add on the left-hand side are the sand dunes. And if you scuttle out there and you face due east on the sand dunes towards a mountain and a rock area called Island in the Sky, you can yell very loudly and passionately, and you will get an acoustic echo like I've never heard anywhere in America.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's really cool. But you let your energy out there, and due to the nature of the rock behind you, which is towards the west as you're facing east, and the sand, you'll hear your voice reverberate. I don't want to stretch it here. We'll say 3 to 7 times. And what's interesting about that is when I do it, my kids say, hey, I want to do that. This is when they were younger. They'd still do it now as young adults. But other people in our context want to do it, which doesn't mean anything about anything. But what I am saying, connected to Brad's statement, and that's why this is coming into mind here, is that we value our story and our voice being heard in the same way that if Nan, you and I and Brad were sitting down and we're looking at a photo album together, that's more meaningful and connecting, at least for me, so I'll speak personally, than us sitting in remote locations looking at it on Facebook, than when we're all looking at a photo album. And so I think there's something to be said when Brad's saying, hey, all of us just want to be heard. It's true. And we see that in this kind of echo analogy, but literal. It's, I am alive and I'm here and you're going to witness me. But when we don't feel that and our voice is squashed by you're not thinking rightly, or don't do that, that's sinful. Or if we go within the Mormon canon, or at least teaching, this would be circa 1968, suicide is selfish, where that idea started with Spencer Kimball.
Oh, I've heard that so much.
It's selfish. And I'm thinking, I've had a small handful, less than I can count on one hand, of people that I've individually worked with and heard their story all alone, who are no longer living. And none of those people were selfish. They were heartbroken.
They were hopeless.
They were hopeless. And as much as we try to assess in a professional way their risk to self-harm, they still have a choice and they still have volition to share what it is they want to share. And sometimes that's not always on your purview as a family member or as a therapist when I'm saying, oh, that's terrible. What didn't I see there? Or how could have I intervened? Or was there something that needed to happen before if you're a mother, right? Or if you are a brother or a friend, that I think it's important to note that we don't always see that. As much as we're trying to live with our eyes and hearts wide open, there's pain that we don't want other people to see, you know?
So Justin, what can we recommend for people who are in those situations? How can they communicate more effectively to receive that openness?
Mm-hmm. We might start with talking about our body. Nan could speak to this, but and maybe she will. But I think as we think about how we're holding our body and where our eyes are, if our eyes are actually the window to the soul, I don't know that means we're looking through someone. But I think we can communicate with our eyes, I would call it gentleness or softness, and with everything in our being. And I said this before, I'm going to keep using the same statement because it's what makes sense to me. If Nan were in that position, it would be, I'm right here, and her sharing or crying or saying, I'm so glad you told me. And maybe it's even as far as, and I don't know what to say right now, but I just hope we can be in this moment. And I don't know that it has to be that serious or that heavy as much as it is. Sometimes we don't know what to say, or we're scared, or we're feeling fearful, or we have old narratives that are coming up around shame, like that's a terrible idea. Don't end your life. I mean, all of us have a history and a story around those kinds of words. And so I think the more we can show up in a way that is compassionate, that is kind, that is curious, that is open, that is, let's have a conversation, or let's entertain that. I mean, think of those words. We're entertaining, we're conversing, we're dialoguing, we're hearing, we're understanding, we're looking, we're exploring, which is typically not what happens. It's, I'm afraid, I need to stop them from doing this. I need to call someone. This needs to stop. This is immoral. This will hurt family. Please don't. Those are the messages. But the things I said just but 30 seconds ago, that's what we want coming up. There's not a flight to rescue or a flight to let's make this okay, because it's not okay. Things aren't okay. They're not okay. And I think it can be okay for them to not be okay, but to say, we're just right here.
You know, it's 100% okay to not be okay and to talk about it. But on the flip side, if you're the person that is depressed and is having these ideations, what's the best way to reach out if you feel all alone? Like, who do you reach out to? What do you say? You know, and not everybody's going to want to reach out to some hotline, to some stranger that's probably going to hang up on you anyway. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I've never called the hotline. I don't really know what happens there, but I would be afraid of that. And like, I don't matter anyway, so who cares type of thing. Like, if you feel so utterly alone, how do you scream for help? How do you get someone to want to sit and listen when you're not seeing a counselor or you're not, do you know what I'm saying? Even if you're a kid, you know, how do you reach out? How can we give people that are going through these things some tools?
So there's a couple things you could do, I think, considering your question, Nan. And we're going to size it up this way. Let's use a formula. Maybe it's an equation. I'm not sure which. I was raised by an engineer, which is beautiful. And so I tend to think that way, even though therapy is so circular and non-mathematical. I tend to think in math terms sometimes. I think the answer is this. I'm going to use some postulates here that will determine maybe how you'll size that person up. If you were in a position that you were feeling despair, betrayal, hopelessness, and then maybe that grows or mutates into some pretty massive hopelessness. You're starting to withdraw socially. You're eating more than you typically would. You're pulling away from some kind of social activities or things that you typically enjoy. And you realize, hey, I'm really crashing here in some ways, and I don't want to tell anybody. I just don't want to expose me. But I feel like I want to, because again, if we're going to go with some of the assumptions I made or teachings that I brought earlier around Island in the Sky and everyone wanting to be heard in that echo, I think I would suggest sizing up who you speak with through that formula. And the formula would be, are they a person? Let's think about a container for a minute. Are they a person that, and I'm cupping my hands, but you can't see it. Are they a person that can hold my story? Are they an 8-ounce cup? Are they a shot glass?
Yeah.
Are they a 32-ounce mug? Are they able to hold space for what I'm sharing or what I'm about to share? And I think how I would size up the ounces of that person and their ability to hold space for me would be on whether they've earned the right to hear it. And social media, I think, has sent a different message. And that is, if you're on my friend list of 2,923, I don't. I think I just broke 4 figures, which is shocking. I don't think I'm that close to 1,000 people. I probably need to pair some people off. I pair down every once in a while. But I think the way that we size up the space that person can hold is based on that postulate. Have they earned the right to hear my story? And then do they have the space to hold it? And social media has communicated, well, we're friends, so we get to do it. And I consistently see people being pretty vulnerable, which is awesome. But sometimes I have to ask myself, without any judgment, goodness, would I be putting that out about me? Now, they may, I don't get to intention guess in this moment and say they don't have the kind of relationship with their friends that they could not or should not do that. I don't know them. I'm just speaking for me. That the nature of some stories that I would share are not privy to the entire planet.
Right.
They're just not. And so I think...
But on the flip side of that,
yeah,
there may be people who don't have those close relationships. And so the only way they feel close to people is through that social media.
True. That's a good point. Is saying, I'm going to put this out there. Now, to that end, there may be those in that forum that haven't earned the right or have not don't have the nature of that relationship that would be commensurate with them sharing the story. And they get a lot of really positive engagement. Maybe, and I'm supporting Brad's challenge to that idea in so many ways, because the DMing that comes back, like, hey, can we talk or we do lunch?
Dungeon mastering?
Yeah, the dungeon mastering. Yes, I know, love it.
You're such a nerd.
Dungeons and Dragons, D&D, baby.
Do you play?
Roll for initiative.
No, but I read a lot of the Dragonlance Chronicles I think there's only 3.
They're cool books.
They're really cool books. Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman. There's some cool stuff there. I do have some really cool dice in my office. It's kind of fun. But to that end, I think they don't have to have necessarily always earned the right, because as Brad's saying, that can promote people reaching out that you didn't even know were there.
Yeah.
Now, I think as well, if you're going to reach out individually, not in that larger social context, I think it's important to know that they would be willing to hear that and that they would hold space for that. And clearly, Brad, in his best efforts, attempted with the supervisor, and it didn't go well. And you're going to have that. I think there's going to be times where I was speaking with my wife recently, and I was in a conversation where there wasn't a lot of space held for what I was talking about. And there was no malice towards this individual, but I remember banging my head on a wall, not literally, but later thinking, how did I misread that? That conversation turned south. I don't know if it was south. It turned 90 degrees, and I realized farther in, hey, this is going to end up in a place that could be hard for both parties. I clearly misread my ability to disclose these kinds of things or share or debate or dialogue, even though it was very healthy where we were going. And so I think Brad's got a good point. Being vulnerable, putting yourself out there where you're comfortable, but as well, per Nan's injunction or question, looking for people who can hold space and who you can feel safe with, so that there's a greater likelihood of you feeling connected and heard when you leave and have that connection.
So bottom line, we want them, if they're being depressed, if they're needing help, they're going darker, reach out and talk to someone that will hear you with their heart, with everything, and crawl down the hole with you and sit with you. And I'm just going to put it out there. If you can't find anybody, you can always get a hold of us. Reach out to us. Don't feel alone. You can get a hold of Justin. You can get a hold of Brad or myself. And we're all about helping you and hearing you. So I just volunteered you, Justin.
Oh, and I'll listen.
And we'll have Justin's link in the show notes.
Absolutely, we will. So, Nan, quick question for you. Through the balancing you do and the work you do, are you able to help with this type of trauma, this type of ideation?
So far, 100%. Yes. Yes. I've had people that have literally walked in my door. Their energy's gray and they are low and they are vibing so low and they're in tears and hopeless and don't know where to turn or what to do. And once they get to talking to their body and feeling their own spirit, and then their body starts to tell them all of the things and shows them the breadcrumbs. Justin, this is why I say you need to come and get balanced so you can see what it's like. I think you would understand what a sacred place it is, because I empower my clients. I'm the conduit, just like I'm a conduit for the other side when I do a psychic medium reading. I'm an energy balancer. I move energy and I'm good at it. But it's each of you that heal yourself. And it's your body, it's your spirit that shows us the breadcrumbs, shows us where the beaver dams are to pull out. And I've had several people that have come in really gray, really dark, hopeless, in tears. I'm at my wit's end. I'm in a mind fuck, like literally been told these things. And when they leave here, it's gone. It's completely gone. And I check in on them and it's not back. Like it's something where you heal body, mind, and soul. And just talking about it starts it rolling, but it doesn't get it out of your energy. And once you heal it in the energy and in the muscles, it's gone. Like you have no charge with it. Like if you feel hopeless, the charge to hopelessness is gone.
Well, and I think once you heal that a little bit, then it gives you that grace that you can go, oh, I can go to Justin and I can go to a professional therapist and work through these
100%
processes now.
Yeah, it takes that. It takes it from DEFCON 10 down to like a 2. And then you're like, okay, this is manageable and I'm okay and I can handle this. And this is what my body's saying. And now let's deal with my mind. Let's sort things out. Let's get some tools to deal with this now. But when you're at a DEFCON 10, you aren't dealing with shit. You're just like, throw me a life preserver. Show me that there's a little bit of hope. Show me that there's another side or that there's a God that loves me. And that's what they do here is they find out how powerful they truly are, and they get to feel spirit come in and help heal them. And it's such an amazing thing to witness. And I've witnessed it lots and lots of times, and no one has come back and been like, I'm so depressed again. I'm in a mind fuck again. Like, they literally feel empowered to grab a hold of their energy, their own power, and be like, okay, I got some work to do. I'm going to go forward now, and I'm good. You know, it's really, really cool. I'm glad you asked that, but yeah.
Very cool.
I am going to say that I think we've dropped the F-bomb more in this episode than any of the others combined.
It's because of Justin. Did you hear him drop it like 5 times?
I started it.
Yep. We're not going to fucking do that here.
It got all of my attention. It was absolutely what was needed to start a ripple. And I thought, boy, I just got owned.
Yeah. Do you know what? Those ripples are far-reaching. Let me tell you about a ripple story.
Ready.
So there I was.
Yep.
Going to college at SUU. And SUU was like the progressive college, right? It was where all the theater people went. And, you know, I was excited about that because I was a theater person in high school. And so I go there and they start the LGB club. I don't think that it didn't even have any other letters with it at the time. Just the LGB club. And here I was, this little redneck kid, Spanish Fork, Utah.
Spanish Fork.
Yep.
Yeah,
oh, I can't believe they're doing this. Oh, blah, blah, blah. And I had a video production class that I was in, and I was partnered up with this guy. His name was Carl. I don't remember anything else about him, but I remember just going off about this club they're putting on campus and blah, blah, blah. How can they do that? Why do they think that's okay? And he would just smile and go, yeah. You know, he wouldn't really say much about it. And a few months later, I was working in Bryan Head, and he came in, and I started talking to him about it because the event there was for the LGBT club. And I found out at that point that not only was Carl in the club, but he was the president. And I looked at him, I said, you know what? I am so sorry I treated you like I did, and said the things that I said. I was so humiliated because the preconceived idea I had about that community was so wrong. And I got to learn how wrong it was and was put in my place by someone with quiet authority. And I will forever be grateful to Carl for teaching me that lesson, because he literally just put his hand on my shoulder and said, hey, Brad, it's okay. That's why we started it, so people would understand better and know that it's not scary.
I love that.
Ripples.
Ripples.
Beautiful.
Big ripples.
That's the Gandhi approach to the ripple effect. I think mine was more like the Mike Tyson approach.
Yeah.
Both led us the same direction. I would have preferred what Brad received.
Well, I
the
think
outcome is the same. On
the
the ripple
humiliation was huge. I felt absolutely humiliated and so regretful. And I would love to sit down and have a conversation with him today and just be like, dude, you changed my life. Because I don't think he knows. I don't think he realizes that. And that's okay. But he absolutely changed the way that I look at people in general.
Did you start to pop a pinky after that?
No, I've always done that.
Oh, okay.
That's just...
I'm trying to see if he was doing something with his pinky this moment. It was
She's
sticking out.
talking about when I drink. So, yeah.
The pinky goes up.
The pinky pops up like he's drinking
Only in
tea,
the closed
English
caption
tea.
films with the Merlot.
Exactly. And you hold it by the stem.
I love it. All this growth. That's good. It is so good to hear those stories that I haven't heard. It's beautiful, actually, to hear about all of our growth in different ways and different capacities.
Thank you. Well, Justin, speaking of growth, if people want to grow and get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Yeah, they can look me up online. They can reach out. I can direct them to other resources if I'm not the best fit for them. If it looks like they need Nan, then I would send them that way. If I can be of service, fantastic. For some that say, no, I want a female therapist, I can make referrals that way. If they're in the community, that's fantastic. I'm happy to see them. If they're not, I can help line them up with people that are. If they'd like to be remote or in office, those are always possibilities. I think the invitation, per Brad's question, I think for me, is if you're struggling, reach out. As Nan said eloquently earlier, like there are people that are willing to hear you. Your story matters. You matter. You count. And that movie, which has a lot of intensity, so forewarning on some of this discussion about suicidality, considering Sarah's key, there's going to be a lot there for a lot of people as we think of trauma and repressed feelings and struggle. But that is that stories that are never told are always forgotten. And it's really okay to stand on the sand dunes, if we kind of reflect back on the show, and to yell towards the east, I'm alive and I need someone to hear me. And that's okay, and that you can find people that you trust, per Nan's question, who will hold space for you, who will listen to you, who will give you gentle guidance. And if you're in need of professional help, well, you can look to that. You can seek out a church or ecclesiastical leader. You can seek out trusted friends. There are professionals that you could reach out to. And there's the 988 number, but there's a way. I might believe that everyone is worthy and has a place on our planet and can unfold just the way that they are, with their struggles and their challenges, but also their complexities and talents and beauty. And that's what I would add is you belong. And if you're feeling this way, it's my hope and my prayer that you'll be brave, that you'll lean into uncertainty and find someone who can hold space for you.
I love that.
Beautifully said, Justin. Thank you.
Sure.
Yes.
There's nothing to say
how do
more
you
than
even-
that. No, it's time to just close it off.
I want to hear your thoughts. Like that was kind of my concluding. Hey, this is what's coming up for me, but I want to hear from you, unless you're there. But I want to hear.
That was amazing, Nan. Though I see your wheels turning.
No, you've just touched my heart so deeply. I'm trying to suck back the tears because everybody's sorry. Everybody's voice matters. Each person matters, like you just said. And it's just so true. And each of us have a purpose here on earth. And when we talk about ripples, picture with me just a still lake, crystal clear, still, nothing going on. And then you go and drop a boulder in the center. And those beautiful ripples that go all the way out, all out to the shore. And then they keep rippling and keep rippling. Each life is a ripple like that, and it can bump into another ripple, and you never know whose ripple is going to be touched by yours and is going to shift them out of where they're at. So we all matter. We're all linked together in love, and please see each other and know you're important and you're so very loved.
Thank you so much, Nan. Thank you, Justin, for being on the show. We love having you.
Thank you.
And thank
I'm so
you.
glad.
Yeah, it's been great to have you here.
Oh, one last thing. Justin also deals with marriage counseling and mixed faith marriages. So if you're having to deal with something like that, that can be really, really, really hard and can be a dark place also. So reach out to him. He's a pro, complete pro, and he can pull you right out of that and give you a ton of hope.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We'll put his information in the show notes with a link to his website, and you can get a hold of him right away.
Yep. And if you'd like to book a reading or a balance with Nan, you can do that through the show notes as well. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening and joining us here today. We hope that if you are feeling hopeless, remember that you're loved, and we'll see you
On the other side of the veil.
Make the most of tonight.